From 9-hole fighters getting suspended from the PFL 2023 season, to Ty Flores admitting that he saw these suspensions coming, here are the PFL fighters that failed drug tests. The Nevada State Athletic Commission dropped the biggest bombshell after 9 PFL fighters tested positive for banned substances, right in the middle of the opening round of matchups for the 2023 season. It all went down in May, and trust me, you're not ready for the details. Thiago Santos, the former UFC title challenger, is caught up in this mess, as he was found to be using clomiphene. But that's not all. Bruno Capellozza, the former PFL champion, is also facing the heat after he was found using drostanolone, and the guy suspended for 7 months until January, with a fine of over $11,000. What's more, he had a win over Matthias Scheffel on April 7th, which was overturned to no contest. But the commission didn't want to reveal PFL's dark, dirty secrets at first, so they eventually spilled the beans in a meeting later on. And turns out, all of them failed their drug tests. 3 of them owned up to their actions and accepted their suspensions right then and there. Alejandro Flores, the featherweight, got hit with a 6-month suspension for testing positive for diuretic furosemide, and a massive fine of $3,000, with his April 1st win against Daniel Torres also overturned. Then there's Krzysztof Jotko, the light heavyweight, who tested positive for clomiphene and was suspended for 6 months and fined $7,000. There's still a bunch of fighters waiting for their turn in the spotlight, and even though the decisions are pending, they're in some deep trouble. Rizvan Kuniev, for example, was busted for using a bunch of substances, including drostanolone, methanolone, boldenone, and 19-norandrosterone. His suspension hasn't been announced yet, but it's going to be bad. Just like that, Mohamed Fakhreddin was found to be using stanozolol and dronastolone, while Cesar Ferreira tested positive for clomiphene and drostanolone. Will Fleury and Daniel Torreshev are on the same bandwagon, waiting for their suspension to be announced. The chaotic mess has rocked the entire organization, and in a bid to make things right, PFL is shaking things up in their regular season matchups. Hell, they even considered teaming up with the United States Anti-Doping Agency for a random drug testing program, the same agency that keeps an eye on the UFC's year-round testing. Just when the PFL thought that things couldn't get any worse, the 10th player to fail the drug test was Rob Wilkinson, and it basically destroyed their entire 2023 season in advance. I mean, the guy messed up big time, especially because Razor started off the new season strong. At PFL 1 on April 1st, he spoiled the arrival of Thiago Santos with a unanimous decision victory. After the first round of season bouts, when Santos and 8 other fighters failed their drug tests, Wilkinson couldn't resist taking a jab at Santos, saying his own win over Moreta was even more impressive because of his opponent's apparent use of performance-enhancing drugs. But karma caught up with him pretty quick, and Wilkinson ended up joining Santos on the suspension bench. He failed his own test, and now he's out of the 2023 light heavyweight season. But get this, it all happened just a week before he was set to make his comeback at PFL 4 in Atlanta, where he was going to face Ty Flores, who scored a unanimous decision win over Delan Monti in his first fight of the season. Wilkinson had his plans, as he was set to face Will Fleury in June, but that got scrapped because Fleury was also caught up in the PFL's drug testing mess. But here's the real kicker. Wilkinson's entire 2023 PFL regular season run got axed, and there's no chance for him to go claim that champion title in the light heavyweight division. I mean, almost everyone believed that the title would be his this season, considering he was on fire in 2022. Undefeated, he snatched 4 wins, dominating the likes of Bruce Soto and Victor Pesta during the regular season, and even crushed Delan Monti in just 97 seconds during the playoffs. He capped it all off with a grand final victory against ex-UFC fighter Omari Akhmedov, and the entire time, he was unstoppable. He even had a shot in the UFC against Israel Adesanya, but none of it worked out. With Wilkinson out, Flores was still going to throw down at the Overtime Arena in Georgia, but now he was facing Dan Spawn in Wilkinson's place. Spawn had his moment on Dana White's Contender Series in 2017, and he's had a mixed run in the Smart Cage from 2018 to 2021, going 2-3-1. But despite this last-minute damage control, the PFL is being dissed from every corner, and even the NSAC chairman Anthony Marnell didn't hold back. He straight up called them out, saying that they needed to take a serious look at themselves after these drug test disasters. But here's the thing about the PFL. They have their own system, different from other promotions because they're all about that year-long season-based format. So, when these fighters got busted for juicing, they're yanked out of their regular season spots and replaced by others. But as they've now realized, regular drug testing has to be part of their process. Even after half the roster has been replaced, some heavy hitters are still part of the game. Players like Ty Flores, Josh Silvera, Marthin Hamlet, and Delane Monty all passed the drug test with flying colors. But the big boss of UFC couldn't resist commenting on the ordeal because, trust me, he's seen it all. Back in the early days of the UFC, PEDs were everywhere. But things have changed since the UFC partnered up with USADA, and they've done a solid job reducing the number of athletes juicing up. So, after UFC on ESPN 46, Dana White stepped up to the mic in front of the media and talked about PFL suspending 10 of its fighters after drug tests. He really didn't hold back. Dana drew parallels to his own recent project, the Power Slap League, and he acknowledged that it's a tough position to be in. He's got no beef with the PFL. He doesn't even know anyone there, but he understands what the promotion's going through. He knows firsthand how challenging it is when you're just starting out. So, he told the PFL firmly that until they can get drug testing in-house, they're gonna keep having problems. Trust me, he's not the only one worried about that, because fans took to Twitter to voice their concerns about this season's progression. As soon as the news of Wilkinson being out of his fight hit social media, fans were left scratching their heads, and one of them tweeted how PFL won't even have a roster, implying that eventually, all the players will be out after failing their drug tests. Other fans joked around with the PFL abbreviation, with one calling it the PED Fighting Championship, while another called it the Positive Test Fight League. The rest of the fans were simply baffled by how half of PFL's roster disappeared, as they sarcastically commended them on putting up a great show. The events left Twitter users confused, as one of them wondered how the players could fail the tests that they knew were coming their way. But one PFL fighter in particular had a lot to say about this ordeal, and it's none other than Ty Flores. He came off a unanimous decision win against Delane Monty at PFL 1. But guess what? He saw the entire drug crisis coming from a mile away. He wasn't surprised to see so many of his fellow fighters testing positive for banned substances. And speaking his mind at the PFL 4 Media Day, he acknowledged that cheaters exist in every sport. MMA is no exception to that. But right from the start, Ty noticed something fishy. Just by looking at some of the suspended PFL light heavyweights, he could tell something wasn't right. And he straight up said that even though everyone talks about a level playing field, it felt like he was the only clean guy out there, and all of the others were jacked. Now, Ty was pumped for the opportunity to prove himself against Wilkinson. But instead, he beat Dan Spahn via unanimous decision, which was still pretty badass. But in Ty's eyes, testing positive for the drugs isn't the end of the world. Getting popped for PEDs doesn't automatically make you unbeatable. Instead, it's about skill, heart, and determination. And while PEDs might help with recovery, it doesn't make you a better fighter overall. But let's face it, PFL had its best year yet in 2022, so this was a major letdown for the organization, and fans were simply left wondering who didn't test positive at this point. But there you have it, folks. From Ty Flores admitting that he saw the suspensions coming, to 9 whole PFL fighters getting suspended from the 2023 season, these were the PFL fighters that failed drug tests.